Now, WPG Talk Radio 1450 brings you a very special program, The Law in Action, featuring a prominent local attorney discussing their area of expertise. Get ready to call in with your questions at 609-407-1450. That's 407-1450. Now, your host for The Law in Action, John DeMasi.
Welcome to the show. Good to have you with us here on a Saturday afternoon. As we like to say now, Harry Hurley's the mayor of the morning. We're the mayor of Saturday afternoon. The Law in Action every Saturday, 1 to 2, right here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Good to have you with us. And as the man said, 609-407-1450 is our number here in the studio. We welcome back. He's part of the team. He was actually the first show we ever did. We called him the leadoff hitter, and then somebody said he ought to bet cleanup. So, you know, they like you, Mark.
That's good to hear.
Mark Karjman is back with us. Mark specializes in criminal defense, DWI, and traffic matters. And if you have any of those or you want to know a little more information about any of those types of things, feel free to pick up the phone at any time and give us a call at 609-407-1450. That's 609-407-1450. Last time you were here, we were talking about guns. And the story, and this was all over the paper and all over the news. The woman from Philadelphia buys a gun because she got beat up, and she had the license to carry in Pennsylvania, which you're allowed to do, correct? She's coming to Atlantic City to set up a party for her son, gets pulled over by a state trooper on the Atlantic City Expressway, and she volunteers to the officer, by the way, I have a gun, but I'm licensed to carry. And he was like, whoa. And, of course, there is no such thing in New Jersey, correct? You can't carry a gun.
You can have a permit in New Jersey, but she did not have a permit in New Jersey. Right. She had a permit in Pennsylvania, which was good for there, but it doesn't
not good for here.
Give you permission to carry in New Jersey.
Right. So now she's arrested. This whole thing, and you were telling us the story of why she went from Atlantic County, then she went to Pennsylvania. She was in jail 47 days. She lost her car because she couldn't make the payments. A whole real mess because of this thing. And she tried to get pretrial intervention here in Atlantic County, and they denied her. Well, apparently there was a groundswell of public opinion, and there was all people actually bought her a car. Somebody bought her a car because she lost the car because it was repossessed. So now, and I have an article here that came out, I think it was the end of September, so this was after you were on the last time here on the show. And she has now been entered into the pretrial intervention program, and she will not be going to jail.
That's definitely good news that the prosecutor did reverse his decision. The case fell under the Graves Act, where she's facing up to 5 years in prison for illegal possession of the gun. PTI is a program that'll keep her record clean and keep her out of jail, so it's definitely a good thing for her and her family.
And I think you were telling me that you believed that she should have been eligible. Again, you're not involved in this case, and you're here to give us your legal opinions. So is your legal opinion that most likely because of the circumstances?
Depending on the circumstances, she does have a permit to carry in another state. She did not have a criminal record. All those factors weighed into the prosecutor changing their decision.
So we wanted to give you the update and moral of the story that sometimes things do work out.
Sometimes they work out in the end, but sometimes they don't. So if you don't have a permit to carry, make sure you don't carry in New Jersey.
That's the thing. If you, because a lot of people come to New Jersey from other states. I mean, obviously the casinos, they come from Pennsylvania, they come from Delaware, they come from New York. So in all of those states, you can carry a gun. You can have a permit to carry a gun, correct?
Yeah, you just have to be careful. And if you're going to travel in a vehicle with your gun, you need to make sure when you're traveling into that state that you're allowed to have it there. Otherwise, you could be facing the same situation as this individual.
Right. So that's the moral of this story. But just know the laws of every state, because every state's different with guns, right?
Right. Every state is different. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, California, Florida, everywhere is different.
Okay. 609-407-1450. That's our number here on the Law in Action, Saturdays 1 to 2 here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Mark Karjman with us. Mark, of course, is with us all the time. He's our regular here on the show. Criminal defense, DWI, and traffic matters. That is what he specializes in. So if you have a question, give us a call, 609-407-1450. So I was telling you this story. I did a promotion in another state with an ex-NFL player, all right? And I'm watching him down drink after drink after drink. And I know he drove to this event. And I'm thinking to myself, and I mean, he's 350 pounds. So I'm thinking to myself, well, I guess because he's 350 pounds, he can do that and drive without worrying about a DUI. Which brings me to this question. How do you know, like, the blood alcohol levels, how do you know, like, what your tolerance is? Obviously, a lot of people know when they are intoxicated. But how do you know, like, if you're 150 pounds, can I have one drink and then I'm over the limit? If I'm 200 pounds, I can have two drinks? That's kind of my question.
Right.
How do you figure out? Because obviously, he walked out of there. I'm telling you, he had 5 shots. I mean, they were full shots. It wasn't like a mixed drink. And I saw absolutely zero effect. And obviously he wasn't affected. I mean, but he's 350 pounds. Not many people are.
Right, and everybody's body is different, but on the average, every shot or alcoholic beverages approximately raises your BAC, your blood alcohol content, 0.02. The limit in New Jersey is 0.08. So if you had 4 drinks or 4 shots, that would get you up to 0.08, which would be the limit. And approximately it takes an hour and a half for your body to remove a drink. So if you have 4 drinks, times that by an hour and a half, and that's about the time you'd be back down to 0.00 BAC.
All right, so then the rule of thumb is if you want to play it safe, based on what you just told me, it sounds to me like 2 drinks, okay, 3, maybe a little push, and then 4, you got a good shot of, if you don't wait the hour and a half and you drive, you got a good shot at a DUI, as I see it.
Right, because you'd be close to the limit.
4th drink, yeah.
And even if you're under the limit, your driving could be impaired, and you could still be charged with a DUI, even if you're under the limit.
Right, because you maybe swerved a little bit or something like that.
Right, based upon if you make any admission to consuming alcohol and your results of the field sobriety test.
Okay, we have a caller. Al, who's waiting to talk to us?
Bob.
Hello, Bob. Welcome to the Law in Action. What's your question for Mark Cargman?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment with regard to gun transportation and gun possession in the state of New Jersey. Several years ago, I was mayor of my township in Warren County, and I received a recorded death threat, a bona fide death threat, and I went to the state police and asked the state police if I could obtain a carry permit because I felt threatened, and I was told at the time that I couldn't get a carry permit under any circumstances. Now, I don't know whether that was a local state police deal or not. I do know this. My campaign manager at the time was a Superior Court judge, and he couldn't get me the permit. And the question that I have is, these laws in the state of New Jersey actually prohibit law-abiding citizens from defending themselves or even the threat that they can defend themselves. And what, if anything, is occurring within the legal profession that might mitigate against all of these problems and attempt to change the law?
Right. The laws are definitely strict in New Jersey. How the process would work if one would like to apply for a carrying permit is you apply to the chief of police in the town where you live for the permit. If you're denied, there is an appeal process in the Superior Court in the county in which you reside. If that's denied, you could further appeal, but basically they'll look into your criminal record. If you have any charges, even if they were dismissed, it's likely they'll deny you. And it's even likely that they'll deny you even if you have a legitimate reason like you had for your safety. Really, even retired law enforcement officers also have difficulty in obtaining a carrying permit. It's just the way the state and the laws are. They don't want people carrying guns in this state, and I don't think it'll change anytime soon, and I don't think there's anything in the pipeline to change that, unfortunately.
Well, I understand that, but you understand that by the time I went through the appeal process, somebody would have shot me or killed me, and I would have had no means to defend myself. Under those circumstances, I had no choice but to actually carry a concealed weapon because I didn't want to walk out of my house without it.
Right, and unfortunately, the way the laws are, they do sometimes force law-abiding citizens to sometimes break the law.
Sure, and I think it's an outrageous situation, and I hope it changes. I don't know why it is in New Jersey. I know that the rules regarding transportation of firearms are so restrictive as to almost prohibit anyone from carrying from transporting a firearm unless you're going to a shooting range and you've got it locked in a box with a separate ammunition and all of that stuff, which is what I do. But I appreciate your answer, and I'm sorry that there isn't anything in the pipeline or isn't any discussion about it, because there certainly should be.
Right, there definitely should be. I appreciate the call.
Bob, thanks a lot. We do appreciate that call. Well, so really, if Bob would have walked out of his house at that time and he carried the gun, he said he carried the gun. If he got stopped, just like this woman got stopped, that's a crime.
Right,
correct?
he would have been charged with a second-degree gun felony under the Graves Act, and he'd be facing 5 years in prison.
5 years in prison, and he's the mayor at that time of a town, gets a death threat. You know, I mean, listen, we're not here to be on this soapbox, but the point is, it does seem to me that in New Jersey there is some discrepancy in that law somewhere. And it also seems to me that someone should bring this up so that people like Bob or this other woman can feel safe.
Right, there should be some exceptions, and it's definitely tough when the legislature makes a statute with a mandatory prison term, which the judges are basically bound to follow.
Okay, 609-407-1450. That's our number here in the studio. It's the Law in Action, Saturdays 1 to 2 here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Mark Karjman is our guest. Mark specializes in criminal defense, DWI, and traffic matters. And if you have a question about any of those, feel free to call us, 609-407-1450. Right before the caller, we were talking about the DUIs, and you were saying that, you know, the limit kind of is 4 drinks. But as I was hearing you explain it, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to err on the side of caution. And if it's 4 and I'm close to the limit, I'm going to stop at 2. That would be me, stopping at 2, because like you said, you may still be considered impaired.
Right.
And then, of course, if you get a DUI, that's a mess.
Right. You still could be charged with DUI even if you're under the limit, and you never know how long it may take your body to evaporate the alcohol from your system.
And everybody's different, right? I mean, every body operates differently.
Right. Depending on how tall you are, how much you weigh, whether or not you ate, that does play a factor. But the general rule is for every drink, it takes an hour and a half to leave your system. And general rule, every drink approximately raises your BAC 0.02.
If you do get a DUI, the first one, I mean, they're all not good, okay? But the first time you get a DUI, there's a little bit of leniency in there?
In New Jersey, there's technically a no negotiation policy in regards to drug offenses and DUIs. For a first offense, if you're over the limit, you face 7 months to a year loss of license. If you're under the limit, or if your attorney is able to suppress the results of your BAC, you could still face a DUI, but it'll be knocked down to 3 month loss of license.
So New Jersey, here's a pattern. Have you seen this pattern? New Jersey's tough on everything.
Tough on guns and drinking and driving, and a lot of traffic offenses for driving while suspended for a DUI also became felony recently in the last couple of years.
Right. I think we had a caller on one of the recent shows.
Correct. Where
the guy drove, and he was suspended for like so many years, and then he got caught, and then what happens? Like if you have a DUI and your license is suspended, and they catch you driving, what happens then?
If they catch you 2 times on your first offense for a DUI, it becomes a 4th degree felony. Or if you have 2 or 3, or after that, if you get caught just once, it becomes a 4th degree felony, and you face a mandatory 180 days in the county jail.
Wow. I tell you, it's a tough state.
Yeah, I was going to ask Mark. Mark, was this something that I heard Governor Christie had a lot to do with this? Not just since he's been governor, but also before that.
Right, and this law came into effect in August of 2011. A lot of people are not even aware that the law went into effect, but because of the Mothers Against Drunk Driving and all the money passed with these groups, the laws are definitely becoming tougher in New Jersey, where a traffic offense now becomes a felony in certain cases like these, driving while suspended for DUI.
So that just changed a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And that's not one of those things that they're going to publicize, the law changed.
Right.
You only know that when you find out from somebody like yourself, or if you get into a DUI.
Right, and in the small print, when you're convicted, they do advise you that there's penalties and you could face upgraded charges, but no one really takes the time to read that paperwork that they get after the court.
When you get a DUI, and I've always said, don't do anything with the law without representation. Good idea to get an attorney.
Yeah,
right?
You definitely want to get an attorney. You always want to be cooperative with the police. Turn over your ID, registration, insurance card. Make sure you take the field sobriety test and submit to the breath test. But it's best just to not give any statements about how much you consumed, where you came from. It's best to remain silent.
Okay. Yeah, I've been stopped. I've told that story a few times. I've been stopped a few times in my life. and they ask you, where'd you come from? And as a matter of fact, one time I was coming from a club, and the guy said, how many drinks you have? I said, I don't drink. And he says, oh, yeah, really? How many drinks did you have? I said, I just told you I don't drink.
Right.
It was like one of these, like he was trying to trap me into saying that, But in any case, who do we have, Al?
We got Mario.
Mario?
Yes.
Mario, hi. Welcome to the Law in Action.
Hi, I have a question about guns, okay? Traveling to the range, okay? I have a pickup truck. A question. You put the bullets in the glove box, the gun in the case, in a bag behind the seat. Is that okay in the state of New Jersey?
It's really supposed to be in your trunk or back compartment of the bed of the pickup truck. It's not supposed to be anywhere where you can reach for it, and the bullets are supposed to be in a separate container box from the gun. So yeah, I definitely would not put it in your glove compartment, because that could be reasonable access, and especially if you do get pulled over, if you go in there to get your registration or any of your documents, the cop sees the gun in there. Yeah, so I definitely put it in the trunk if you had one, or the back bed of the pickup truck in a locked box.
Right. Well, I definitely have it in the lockbox. So I put it in a backpack. But the bullets, when I travel with it to the range in Egg Harbor Township, I just have the bullets in the glove box.
Okay, yeah, I would put the bullets in a separate container, not in the as far back of the vehicle as you can. So there's no reasonable access if you do get stopped, and they said that you had the right to access the gun or the bullets.
Okay, and that's okay. That appeases my mind a little bit. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks
a
a lot for the call, and do what Mark says, and we'll give out his number in case you get stopped.
Sure.
You didn't do it.
You forgot.
You forgot. Well, call Mark, and he'll help you.
Right,
Okay.
and I actually had a client went to the shooting range with a couple guns, got to the range, sign posted that he couldn't carry one of the guns there. He couldn't shoot that gun. He ran back to his truck, just threw it in the front seat, forgot the gun was there. He properly stowed all the other guns that he took to the range properly in the back of his bed of his truck. He had a seizure on the way home, gets in an accident. Cops show up to help him, but also found the gun, and he got charged with the Graves Act because that was considered carrying the gun that he forgot to put away in the trunk, and it was right there.
Did he have to go to prison for that?
We ended up getting him 1 year probation.
Okay.
So he saved us from jail
that's
time.
better than
Well,
Right.
well that's because Mark had it.
Well,
That's
exactly.
right.
There you go. Thank you, Al. If you've just joined us, this is the Law in Action, Saturdays 1 to 2, here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Mark Kargman is our guest. Mark, of course, is an attorney. He specializes in criminal defense, DWI, and traffic matters. We'll give out his phone number, his email, his website. We'll do all that after the break. With Mark Kargman, I'm your host, John DeMasi. More Law in Action after these words.
Love lives at Sage Jewelers. Where else? Sage Jewelers is your love headquarters any time of the year. At Sage Jewelers, they know they don't own the market on love, but they do have a selection that can express your feelings in a variety of ways. Love and diamonds go together, and of course, Sage Jewelers has an exquisite selection in designer settings that will take her breath away. And all diamonds are certified by independent laboratories. Whether you're popping the question now, next week, next month, or expressing emotions that only the years have brought, Sage Jewelers can help you say it right. If you're looking at diamond remounts, that's their specialty as well. Whatever way you want to say I love you, say it at Sage Jewelers. 90 days, same as cash, financing available. Sage Jewelers, Tilton Road, Northfield, across from Friendly's.
Sage Jewelers, the ultimate expression of love.
You got pulled over recently. Unfortunately, you were charged with a DWI. So where do you go? What do you do? Before you do anything, you should contact Mark Kargman. Mark Kargman, located on the Black Horse Pike at EHT, specializes in DWI and traffic matters. It's a tough time that you're facing, and you shouldn't face it alone. Don't do it without the proper legal representation. Keep this number handy, 609-241-6244, 609-241-6244. That's the number for Mark Kargman, DWI, traffic matters, even criminal defense. Points on your driver's license? That can be devastating, especially when it comes to insurance. Without the proper legal representation, you could end up with more points than you thought possible. That's why you need an attorney like Mark Kargman. That number again, 609-241-6244, 609-241-6244 for Mark Kargman.
All right, we're back here on the show. If you'd like to reach Mark Kargman during the week or any time, you heard the number, but we'll give it out to you again, 609-241-6244, 609-241-6244. You never know when you're going to need that number.
Put it
So-
in your cell phone.
Exactly. Put it in your cell phone. Write it down. 609-241-6244, and you answer 24 hours.
I'm available 24/7,
Right. That's
365.
Right. Yes. Okay. And email Mark Kargman. That's Mark with a K, Kargman, Mark Kargman at yahoo.com. Website is www. Again, same thing, M-A-R-K, K-A-R-G-M-A-N, markkargman.com. If you would like to talk to Mark right now here on The Law in Action, 609-407-1450. That's our number here in the studio, 609-407-1450. We'll stay on the DUIs for the moment because that seems to be fairly prevalent, and maybe we'll get back to guns if people have questions about gun issues. But with the DUI, the first offense, as you said, it's okay. It's you lose your license, 7 months, whatever it happens to be. But there are other things with that, correct?
Right. The fines approximately come to $700 from the court, and then motor vehicles will surcharge you $1,000 a year for a period of 3 years. You'd also be required to spend 12 hours in the Intoxicated Drivers Resource Center, which is a 2-day class on drunk driving. And if your reading, your BAC, was a .15 or higher, or if you refuse to take the test, you'd be required to install the interlock device on your car for a period of a year, which you would have to blow into, and your car won't start if you have above a .02 BAC, and you're also responsible for those costs of getting installed as well as the monthly calibrations.
Doing the quick calculation, I heard $1,000 a year for 3 years. That's $3,000. Then $700 for the fine. That's $3,700. Now, if you have to put this device in, which your car wouldn't start, there's obviously a fee for that.
Right. There's an installation fee and then a monthly fee,
A monthly fee. So
as well as a $100 restoration fee just to get your license back, as well as to take that IDRC class is approximately $230.
But in the case of installing that device where you have to blow into it and your car won't start, I mean, is that in all cases or is that in extreme cases?
That's only on a second or subsequent offense, mandatory. First offense, it's only mandatory if your reading is a .15 or higher, or if you were charged and convicted of refusing to take the breath test.
I've asked you this before, but it's worth repeating on other shows. Because people sometimes, they get a DUI. Well, I'll just go into court and I'll plead guilty. I'll pay the fine, whatever. But that's not a good idea, is it?
Yeah, it's definitely not. And a lot of judges won't even let you do that. They'll require you to either hire a private attorney or at least apply for the public defender.
Defender's thing, right.
Because the consequences are severe and there are a lot of defenses to the case, and you may be able to beat the case even if you know that you were under the influence of alcohol that night.
Which leads me to my next question. What are some of the defenses? Obviously, they were stopped. It was proven that they were above the limit, whatever it is. So what kind of defense could you give, or what can you do to help them in that situation?
Right. The first thing you want to look at is the probable cause for the stop, whether it was a speeding or some type of offense like that. If you can find out there wasn't probable cause for the stop, you can possibly get the case thrown out. You also want to look at operation of the vehicle to see if that's an element of the offense that can be proved. Then you want to look at the documents from the breathalyzer, which is now called the Alcatest machine. You want to look at the calibration records, the solution change records. The machine has to be calibrated every 6 months. The solution in the machine has to be changed every 30 days or every 25 tests, whatever comes first. The officer also has to observe the person for a period of 20 minutes before administering the test to make sure they don't regurgitate, try to throw up, put anything in their mouth. And the officer also has to be certified in the test every 2 years. So it's definitely all the documents we get in the discovery process and try to find an error. If we can find an error, we can get the reading thrown out of court. If we can do that, the person could still be convicted of a DUI, but only up to 3 months based upon an admission to alcohol and the results of the field sobriety test. Then from there, we would challenge the field sobriety test and see at the officer's training and how the tests were administered and see if the person has any existing medical injuries that may have affected their results.
So there's things you can do, obviously, and you've just listed all of them. But I guess the other question is when people, get involved in this kind of stuff, the DUI, the inconvenience of having to have somebody drive them around and all. That's the other thing we didn't factor in here. I mean, if you don't have your license, you don't want to drive because if you get stopped without a license, then it becomes worse.
Exactly, and unfortunately, New Jersey doesn't have any type of work or hardship license like other states do. So if you can't drive, you can't drive. You either need to pay for public transportation or pay for someone to drive you around or find someone nice enough to do it for free.
Well, that's what a friend of mine happened to him, and it was like 7 months, like you said. It was the first one. 7 months, and he had to be driven here and he had to be driven there, and sometimes he would take the train, had to go to Philadelphia, take the train back and forth. You know, it became a pain, but he managed.
Right.
All right. But like you said, yeah, get people nice enough. How do you find that? Because people are busy, and so it becomes a problem.
And especially in South Jersey, everything's so spread out. We're not a major city like Philly where you can walk or take public transportation. If you need to get anywhere, not too many places are within walking distance.
Right, that's what I'm saying. In South Jersey, I mean, where I live, the walk to the mailbox is 20 minutes.
Right.
You know, so it's like you can't go anywhere without a car without being, inconvenienced.
Exactly.
But I guess the question is, though, when it comes to not just DUIs, but other traffic issues, whether it's speeding or running a red light, whatever the case happens to be, people tend to just kind of go into court on their own with those things. Do you recommend they do that, or do you recommend that in some cases or in all cases you go into court with an attorney?
Yeah, I would say even if it's a minor offense, you definitely want to consult with an attorney because you may be given a traffic summons and the cop may say a court appearance isn't required. It's just a speeding ticket. You look on the back of the ticket, it's payable, maybe $85 or $100. Person may pay that, but then the person will get points down the road from motor vehicles that they're unaware of. So it's definitely best to consult an attorney because although the fine may be payable without a court appearance, you won't know how many points you're facing unless you call an attorney or look it up yourself.
Right. So if you just pay the fine, if it's like, and there's so many, there's a system in place, right? If you go 15 miles over the speed limit, it's one thing. If you go 20 miles, it's another. If you go 25, it's another. The further you're over the speed limit,
Right.
the more points, right?
Right. In New Jersey, 1 to 14 miles over the limit, you face 2 points. 15 to 29, 4 points, and 30 or over, 5 points. So, say if you get caught going on the expressway, 80 and a 65, you may pay the ticket $100. Well, you'll get 4 points, and you
Right.
won't be aware of that. It may affect your insurance and your driving record as well.
Yeah, well, I told this story before. Ex-fiance, she gets a speeding ticket, and I just got it and I paid it, and it was 17 miles over. So I think it was a 72 and a 55.
Right.
Now there's the cutoff right there.
Right.
So if it would have gone into court with you, you might have been able to plead it down to a 68 and a 55, which means no points, right?
Right. We
Right.
pleaded down to an unsafe operation, which is no points, approximately a $400 fine. Or if a person doesn't want to pay that much, you can downgrade it from the 5 or 4 point offense to a 2 point offense, which is a lesser fine.
Towns make money on traffic tickets, don't
They
they?
definitely do. And with this unsafe operation, the court keeps the fine and the court cost, and motor vehicles gets a $250 surcharge. So the court and motor vehicles gets their money, and people get to keep their records clean.
Okay, let's go to the phones. We have Alejandro. I love saying that name. Alejandro. Welcome to the Law in Action.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question for Mark regarding DUI checkpoints where they really stop every single car that's going by, whether it's outside of a major city or a location where there's multiple bars, clubs, etc. And what I've seen recently, actually, with a car approaching the checkpoint, and he simply turned into a local business and turned around, assuming he wanted to go a different way and not get caught. Meanwhile, there was a police officer looking for those types of vehicles, trying to avoid that checkpoint, and the police officer pulled the gentleman over going in the opposite direction. That's legal? Even though they did not commit any traffic violation, they are able to pull you over without plausible cause. Is that true?
Right, and that's a good question. Under the community caretaking function, the police officer most likely will pull you over and ask you if you try to evade the checkpoint. Most likely the person would say no. And then at that point, if the officer smells any alcohol or sees anything's unusual, he may get the person out of the car and ask to perform the field sobriety test. So it is legal for them to approach the vehicle and find out under the community caretaking exception or whether or not the person did try to evade the checkpoint. And if everything checks out, then the person would be free to go and wouldn't get any charge. Even if they did admit that they tried to avoid the checkpoint, there's no type of charge for that. There'd only be a charge if the cop finds something else wrong.
Okay. And I guess that leads me to my second question around, when you get pulled over, it's, your suggestion of, trying to be as silent as possible, but, the more silent you are, the police officer will probably get, they'll suspect something is going on if you're not answering their questions. So how do you balance that between being professional and answering their questions and then trying to protect yourself?
Right, and that is a good question. Always advise clients to don't say anything because anything you say could be used against you. And most people say, I just had one drink. Well, that's a statement against you that could be used in court that you did consume alcohol. So I would provide your ID, take all the testing, and like you said, the officer may be upset that you're not answering his questions, but you just say, look, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm just exercising my right to remain silent, which you do have under our law. So I would definitely advise people to use that right that you have.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Alejandro. Appreciate the call. So let me tell you where this leads me to. New Jersey used to have inspection, like you had to get your car inspected every year.
Right.
And it always happened to me where the inspection was due. I didn't get it done because I didn't have time to stand in those inspection lines. So I had a mechanic who would do it. You pay for it, which I didn't mind doing that. But a couple of times I saw, they used to have those inspection points
Right.
that they would stop you, and they would get cars that way. So I would avoid that because it was I got to get that inspected, and I knew my car was fine, but I did that a few times.
Right. Yeah, it happens. You're not the first or the last.
Yeah, but that was the inspection point. But he's talking about a DUI.
Right.
He's talking about like to check for alcohol.
Right.
That type of thing.
And you see that in some towns. I believe a couple months ago in Haddon Heights, they did have that where they were just checking to make sure the cars were inspected or if they had any other issues or if the person had valid insurance and registration. There are also, checkpoints that are not necessarily for DUI as well.
Thank goodness that the governor eliminated that inspection thing.
Right.
I mean, that used to drive me crazy.
Yeah, that was tough.
A lot of people did, I'm
Right.
sure. Okay, more to talk about here on the show. It's The Law in Action, Saturdays 1 to 2 here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Mark Kargman is with us. Mark specializes in DUIs, criminal defense, and traffic matters. You have a question for Mark, feel free to give us a call, 609-407-1450, 609-407-1450. With Mark Kargman, I'm your host, John DeMasi. We return. More of the show after these words.
Alimony, child support, custody, equitable distribution. These are all terms you hear when you're dealing with the end of a marriage. Unfortunate but true. So where do you turn at times like these? You need experienced, knowledgeable representation as only Cynthia Brassington can provide. For many years, Cynthia Brassington has been practicing family law in the area and has helped many deal with the trials and tribulations of a divorce. If you're thinking about it or currently facing divorce, then you should contact Cynthia Brassington at 609-601-2323. That's 609-601-2323. Conveniently located in Linwood Commons on Route 9 in Linwood, Cynthia Brassington has helped hundreds of families over the years deal with the difficulties of divorce. Make sure you receive your equitable distribution. Call Cynthia Brassington, 609-601-2323. Love lives at Sage Jewelers. Where else? Sage Jewelers is your love headquarters any time of the year. At Sage Jewelers, they know they don't own the market on love, but they do have a selection that can express your feelings in a variety of ways. Love and diamonds go together, and of course, Sage Jewelers has an exquisite selection in designer settings that will take her breath away. And all diamonds are certified by independent laboratories. Whether you're popping the question now, next week, next month, or expressing emotions that only the years have brought, Sage Jewelers can help you say it right. If you're looking at diamond remounts, that's their specialty as well. Whatever way you want to say I love you, say it at Sage Jewelers. 90 days, same as cash, financing available. Sage Jewelers, Tilton Road, Northfield, across from Friendly's.
Sage Jewelers, the ultimate expression of love.
Back here on The Law in Action, if you'd like to reach Mark Kargman at any time, here's his number. You heard him say earlier, put it in your cell phone. Good idea. Or write it down. If you're old-fashioned like me, you write them down, and
That's
then,
right.
then you enter them later. 609-241-6244. 609-241-6244. His website is Mark, that's with a K, Kargman, Kargman, markkargman.com. Check that out if you like, but keep that number handy. You never know. 609-241-6244. Here on The Law in Action, as you know, we're here every Saturday 1 to 2 here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. You have a question for Mark, 609-407-1450. That's our number here in the studio. A lot of calls so far today. Feel free to pick up the phone. Give us a call if you have a question. A question came in way back when, and you answered it on one of the shows, but I think it bears repeating, about expunging records.
Right.
It is possible to have your record expunged, correct?
Certain criminal offenses can be expunged. Traffic offenses can never be expunged. So if you had a speeding charge from 20 years ago, it stays on your record forever. Certain criminal offenses can be expunged. Anytime a criminal charge gets dismissed, it can immediately be expunged. Anytime a person finishes PTI or some other type of diversionary program, there's a 6-month waiting period after you finish that, then you can get that expunged. Disorderly persons offenses, misdemeanors, which are in municipal court, like your simple assaults, shoplifting, that's a 5-year waiting period. Felonies are a 10-year waiting period, but you can do it after 5 if you can show good cause. Certain offenses you can never get expunged, like murder, those type cases.
Okay. We're going to talk about that case later on in the show,
right?
About that murder case. You were talking about it before the show. Who do we have waiting for us, Al?
We got Natalie.
Natalie, hi. Welcome to The Law in Action.
Hello. I have a friend who, 60 years old, recently riding his bicycle and was hit by a van and presently in the hospital. And I understand that, well, his hip was broken. But anyway, the police came into the hospital and gave him a ticket for, I believe it was failure to maintain lane, 39-4-82. And I'm wondering if he has a defense. I believe he was, riding down the side of the road and maybe at the time was crossing the road, and he heard, a horn and then screeching, and that's really all I know.
Okay, yeah, there definitely may be some defenses to the case, especially if there are witnesses who may have witnessed the incident, and bicyclists do have to obey the traffic laws, and they can be given a traffic ticket, so technically he is facing points on his driver's license, even though he was driving on a bicycle. But yeah, there definitely may be some defenses and ways to beat the ticket.
Okay, Natalie?
Oh, yeah, I was wondering too, about why he was told to report the accident to his car insurance carrier.
That is a little unusual because it was just a personal injury on a bicycle. It really won't affect his insurance, so that is a little unusual. But you definitely want to see if you can beat the ticket and at the very least get no points on his driving record.
Yeah, Natalie, it sounds like, is this going on right now, this case?
Yes.
Yeah, well, what I would do is...
Yeah, 1 week.
Yeah, well, what I would do is, and there's no obligation if you make the phone call, I would call Mark in the office because he can probably delve into it a little more in detail, and maybe he can help you out.
Sure, yeah, be happy to contact you.
You know, I would do that.
Okay.
All right, we gave out his number. We'll give it out again soon, okay?
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks a
so
lot
much.
for the call.
Bye-bye.
609-407-1450. So if you're on a bicycle, if you're riding a bicycle, so you have to obey the same laws as if you were driving a car.
That's correct. You could get run a red light, run a stop sign. You could get a ticket for that. If you're swerving all over the road, could get a ticket for that. You can't get a DUI because it's not a motor vehicle,
Right.
although there was a judge in Atlantic County that did convict an individual of DUI on a bicycle, but that case later got overturned by the appellate division. But you can get a traffic ticket. You do have to obey the traffic laws. A lot of times in the shore towns, you will see officers giving people tickets, especially down in Sea Isle, Avalon, if they run a red light or stop sign, and it does go on your driving record, the points.
You know how many times I've seen bicyclists go through a red light? I'm sure you have too.
Right.
Well, you're an attorney. You probably go, oh, there's a potential case.
Right, a violation.
There's a violation. But I've seen it all the time. And then, I mean, listen, I'm nothing against bicyclists. But where I live in Brigantine, they have bike lanes.
Right.
And you know how many times I see people, they're not in the bike lane, they're out in the middle of the street. So it's like, I guess people think, and I'm glad you're on here talking about this, people think that if you're on a bicycle, there's no laws.
Right.
That's what I gather out of this. Do you find that?
Yeah, and a lot of people are unaware that they have to stop at a stop sign. They just may look and see if any cars are coming, but it does go on your driving record, and you do have to still obey the traffic laws. Obviously, you probably can't get a speeding ticket unless you're Lance Armstrong and you can get your bicycle up to 60, but the other laws,
Right.
you could be found guilty of.
Right. Okay, 609-407-1450. That's our number here in the studio. Again, Mark Kargman, He is our guest. Mark specializes in criminal defense, DUIs, and traffic matters. And if you have a question about any of those types of things, give us a call, 609-407-1450. Here on The Law in Action, every Saturday 1 to 2, here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. We're talking about expungements right before the caller. So it is possible to have your record expunged.
Right.
So now if you get something expunged and then 10 years later you have another case or you have another particular situation and you're convicted, whatever it happens to be, now that stays on. Can you get the second thing expunged 5 years later?
It depends on what it was for. Usually with misdemeanors, disorderly persons offense, usually you're allowed to get 2 expunged. But with felonies, it's usually only 1, depending on the circumstance, because the way the statute is written, that you can have a subsequent expungement. So it depends upon the charge and the conviction. But it's normally, you can always get 1, but depending on the circumstances, you may or may not be able to get another one expunged.
So pretty much figure you get 1.
Right.
And that's
if it gets dismissed, or if you get PTI, you're good. If you get another conviction, you'd be okay. But then anything after that, you may be in jeopardy of not being able to get expunged.
What about things like, and I know this happens to people, they get probation or they have to do community service. What happens if they get it and they're in New Jersey and their job takes them to another state?
Right.
Are you able to transfer probation to another state?
Yes, probation can be transferred. I have a lot of clients from Pennsylvania come here and get in trouble. Their probation can be transferred as long as your home state and home county accepts the probation, which most states have no problem with. They may have different conditions of the probation that you may have to abide by. Some states are maybe a little stricter. But yes, probation can be transferred. And just of note, in regards to the expungements, the 5-year time period, say, doesn't start until you're finished, say, your probation. So it doesn't go from the date you're convicted. It doesn't go. It starts when you're actually finished. So if you plead guilty and get 3 years probation, then that's actually an 8-year waiting period because you're not eligible at that time period. Doesn't start until you're finished the probation.
Very good point. So if, let's say it was 1995, you were convicted and your probation was 5 years, so that's 2000. So the meter starts from the year 2000.
Right. It starts when you're finished. So that would be, really.
So you couldn't do anything until 2005.
Right,
say,
which would be a long time.
Okay. Back to the phones, Al.
Yeah, we got Mike.
Mike, hi. Welcome to The Law in Action.
How you doing? Thanks for having me on. I'm a little confused. Say my kid, who's like 9 years old, 10 years old, passes a red light on his bike. Now they're going to issue him a traffic ticket? And how does that go on his driving record? Is it posted on his driver's record when he gets a license?
Right, and hopefully the officer wouldn't give him a ticket because he was so young. Hopefully you just advise him that you can't do that. But yes, technically, even if you don't have a license, whether you're above the age or lower or you're not even from this country, it would go against that state's driving history. Even if you don't have a license, the points still could go on your record. And if you're convicted of certain other offenses, it could also be a bar and a prevention from getting you your license from the time that you'd be eligible for it.
Oh, okay. So I guess I'm going to have to train my kids and make sure they don't pass any red lights.
Yeah, you just want to be careful out there. And hopefully the officer would exercise discretion if a child's that young and hopefully wouldn't give him a ticket in that situation. But, yeah, you definitely want to be careful of that as well.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for calling.
Mike, thanks for the call. I never thought of that. That's why we have the callers here. They bring up things that I never thought of.
Right, that was a good point.
I mean, 9 years old, and they wouldn't give him a ticket.
Yeah, it's doubtful that they would, but if they wanted to, they could.
But obviously it's a good idea to, no matter what their age, to tell them you got to obey laws. Like the stop sign means stop. The red light means stop.
Right.
Like I said, people think, I still think that even adults think, well, I'm on a bike. I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
I don't have to worry about it.
And a lot of people are unaware.
Yeah, well, anyway, 609-407-1450. That's our number here in the studio. Again, it's The Law in Action. Saturdays 1 to 2 here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. I tell you, I'm glad when you're on because there's so many things that come out.
A lot of topics.
A lot of topics, and people thinking, wait a minute, my kid's on a bike and he's going to get a ticket. But if he got a ticket, then he couldn't get his license. So 7 years later, 8 years later, right, he wouldn't be able to get his license.
Right. If you get a bunch of tickets, it raises the points, and then certain offenses carry a possible loss of license if you get charged or convicted. So it could be a prevention of a person obtaining their license.
Okay, we're coming up on a break, but before we do that, what's the worst traffic case you ever had?
I would say the worst traffic type cases are either your DUIs with a multiple offender or the leaving the scene of an accident where there was an injury. Those are basically 2 serious offenses that carry a substantial loss of license.
You've obviously had cases like
Yeah,
that.
a lot of those, as well as the driving while suspended. They would probably be your 3 most serious traffic offenses because the penalties are so severe.
If you leave the scene of an accident, and obviously you're doing that because whatever the case with your license, that's pretty serious, isn't it?
It is, and if a person was seriously injured, it would become a felony. If, say, you just hit a pole or something like that, you'd be charged with leaving the scene, and it would be handled in municipal court, facing loss of license and a substantial amount of fines as well.
So, moral of the story there: don't leave the scene of an accident, no matter what the case, because it's worse if you leave and you get caught, right?
Exactly, it's worse down the road, and in court, if you can downgrade that charge to just failing to report an accident, which is a $200 fine and no suspension.
Okay, more to talk about here on the show. The Law in Action, Saturdays 1 to 2 here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. 609-407-1450. That's our number here in the studio. Questions for Mark Karjman. Mark is our guest today. He specializes in criminal defense, DWI, and traffic matters. 609-407-1450 is our number. We're coming back with more of the Law in Action right after these words.
You got pulled over recently. Unfortunately, you were charged with a DWI. So where do you go? What do you do? Before you do anything, you should contact Mark Karjman. Mark Karjman, located on the Black Horse Pike in EHT, specializes in DWI and traffic matters. It's a tough time that you're facing, and you shouldn't face it alone. Don't do it without the proper legal representation. Keep this number handy, 609-241-6244, 609-241-6244. That's the number for Mark Karjman, DWI, traffic matters, even criminal defense. Points on your driver's license? That can be devastating, especially when it comes to insurance. Without the proper legal representation, you could end up with more points than you thought possible. That's why you need an attorney like Mark Karjman. That number again, 609-241-6244, 609-241-6244 for Mark Karjman. Alimony, child support, custody, equitable distribution. These are all terms you hear when you're dealing with the end of a marriage. Unfortunate but true. So where do you turn at times like these? You need experienced, knowledgeable representation as only Cynthia Brassington can provide. For many years, Cynthia Brassington has been practicing family law in the area and has helped many deal with the trials and tribulations of a divorce. If you're thinking about it or currently facing divorce, then you should contact Cynthia Brassington at 609-601-2323. That's 609-601-2323. Conveniently located in Linwood Commons on Route 9 in Linwood, Cynthia Brassington has helped hundreds of families over the years deal with the difficulties of divorce. Make sure you receive your equitable distribution. Call Cynthia Brassington, 609-601-2323.
Back here on the Law in Action, and again, Mark Karjman is our guest. He specializes in criminal defense, DWI, and traffic matters. His number, if you want to talk to him, 609-241-6244. You heard earlier that someone has a issue, and certainly give Mark a call. You're happy to talk to him.
Yeah, feel free to contact me after the show.
Right, 609-241-6244. And I can attest to the fact that he answers the phone at any time.
Yeah, it's true.
609-241-6244. His website, Mark Karjman. That's MarkKargman, markkarjman.com. A couple of minutes left of the show. If you want to jump in with a question, 609-407-1450. And this, of course, we know that this doesn't apply to most of our listeners. We know that.
Hopefully.
There was a case, and I know you wanted to comment on this. It was in the news, I believe it was like last week or the week before. A gentleman got out of jail. He was in jail for 30 years on a murder charge, served 30 years, and was let out. Lived in Atlantic City. Went home. His mother threw a party for him, celebrating he's out for the first time in 30 years. He was 15 when he went in. Now he's 45. He was out, 2 days?
Yes.
2 days. And he killed his mother.
Yes, that's definitely an unfortunate situation.
I mean, it is sad, but I mean, we could do probably hours on this whole issue of, was he rehabilitated? What was obviously not,
right?
But he kills his mother, and you were saying, because you followed the case, and again, we can talk about this because Mark is not working on this case, but he went in front of Judge Donio without an attorney, and Judge Donio saying, hey, listen, you want representation? He said, I have nothing, Your Honor. I want to go back to jail.
Right, and he admitted that he did it and
Admitted that he did it. It seems like he wanted to do something to go back to jail.
Right, and
but he was only out 2 days.
Right, and a lot of times a person, when they get released from prison, they do have difficulty readjusting to society, and especially if they don't have a strong support system, or even if they do have a strong support system, the way of life is so different. When he was incarcerated 30 years ago, wearing iPads, iPhones, just the small things that we have today, life has changed so much, and then you get out and you just don't know how to deal with things and handle your emotions.
That's right. If you ever saw the movie, and this really touches on this, The Shawshank Redemption, I don't know if you ever saw that movie, but it's a great movie, yes. But it really addresses that issue of people being in prison for so many years and not really being able to adjust, which, again, back to the question, are they rehabbing them or what? Are they just locking them up?
Right, and hopefully we can have some more support systems that'll help people upon their release.
Right. We have a caller, Al?
Yeah.
Okay, who do we have?
We have another Mike.
Another Mike, huh? It's a run on mics today. Hi, Mike. Welcome to the Law in Action.
Hi, thank you. I had a question for your guest, but it infuriates me to no end to when somebody says, well, the gentleman dragged a woman in the alley, then the gentleman pulled her hair and smashed her in the head and raped her and finally killed her, and then the gentleman... they're obviously not gentlemen. I think that's inappropriate. But anyway, I wanted to ask your guest, if you're stopped for drunk driving, should you blow into the whatever they do? I don't drive drunk, but you never know when you have an extra half a glass of wine. You know, you're going to be in big trouble.
Right, and that's a good question. In New Jersey, it's always best to take the test, even if you know you may have had too much to drink, because there are more defenses if you take the test. If you don't take the test, you'll be charged with refusal, which is more severe penalties, and there's less defenses. There are ways to beat that case, but there's more severe penalties, and under the implied consent laws in New Jersey, if you drive in New Jersey, you consent to taking a breath test. So I'd always recommend, even if you drank a lot, or it's always best to take the test, no matter what.
If they say they want to search your car, should you let them search your car or tell them no?
I would say no, because you have a right to say no. If you give them consent, they'll search, or they may say, hey, you're going to be here for a couple of hours until we get a warrant, or we're going to bring out the dogs, and I would say, okay, because you have certain rights and you should use them. So I would say, even if you don't have anything to hide, you have a right not to consent, and you should exercise it.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thanks for the call.
Mike, thanks a lot for the call. Yeah, we appreciate that. Yeah, he was talking about the gentleman dragged the woman. I was thinking the same thing. That's no gentleman.
Right.
Pulled her hair and all, that's no gentleman.
Right, and a lot of times it's just certain court phrases.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they're not inferring that he's a true gentleman.
Right.
They're just saying he's a male.
Right,
That's
just
really
a surname, right.
Yeah, so they can't say the male perpetrator because they can't say that until he's convicted, right? So
right, they usually say allegedly, and sometimes
right.
people get upset when a person...
Well, yeah, and I agree with Mike. I agree. The guy is no gentleman.
Right.
But we were talking about that case of the fellow who was in for 30 years and was out 2 days and he shot his mother. Now, how did he get the gun?
I believe he borrowed it.
So the guy who lent him the gun is in trouble, right?
I would assume so, if they can find out who he was, or if the guy that was charged with murder says where he got the gun from, that person would be in trouble as well.
But who would give a gun to a guy who just got out of jail?
Right.
And it was in 30 years for murder? Who would give him a gun?
That's pretty fast. 2 days out, you can get a gun after being in jail for 30 years.
But I guess I'm not from that kind of mentality. I mean,
right.
You see it. You deal with this,
right.
So I guess you understand a little better. I have no understanding of that.
Right.
I mean, how you could...
Yeah, it's definitely just a different mentality. I guess that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah. Do you find that in a lot of cases where you're dealing with these types of things that there are problems as a result of someone being incarcerated, that there are more problems when they came out than when they went in?
I would say the recidivism rate is pretty high, but I would say people do also get rehabilitated as well.
Okay. So it could go both ways.
Yes.
Real quick, we'll try to get this call in now.
Yeah, we got David.
David? Hi, David. What's your question?
Hi. How you doing, Mark?
How you doing?
Calling for a quick final question for you.
Sure.
I was wondering if I got a some type of ticket in another state, would you, being from New Jersey, be able to represent me?
I am licensed in Pennsylvania as well, so I could help you out with that as well. Even if you're a New Jersey driver and you get a ticket in another state, say Florida, I could also get in contact with colleagues there and make sure that an offense there won't have any effect upon your New Jersey driving history, because even if you get a violation at a state, and that state may not assign points, but you need to check with New Jersey to see if any points will be assigned on your driving record here.
All right. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for the call.
I'll you later today.
All right, thank you.
All right, David, thanks a lot for the call.
Bye-bye.
And with that, we will give out Mark's number again, 609-241-6244. As always, you get a lot of calls.
It was a good show.
You're a popular guy.
I thank all the callers for listening and calling in.
609-241-6244 is Mark's number. Again, 609-241-6244. I'll give you his website again, www.markkargman.com. That's Mark Kargman, MarkKargman, markkargman.com. Again, that phone number, 609-241-6244. You can call him in about 5 minutes, and you'll answer your phone, right?
Answer on the first ring.
Right, okay, which you usually do. But appreciate it. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Good to have you with us, and we hope to get you back again.
I look forward to being back.
Okay. All right, and with that, we're going to put the wraps. We got how much time do we have, Al?
We only got about 20 seconds.
Okay, we got 20 seconds.
Yeah, something like that.
You threatened to sing at one time, but we're not going to let you do that.
I am a professional singer.
Okay, well, do that on Hurley's show, all right?
Well, then there have to be money involved if I sing and all that stuff. I can't get it.
Good luck getting money out of Hurley for that, all right? Next week, we're going to have Tom Sobrati on the show. Tom, of course, concentrates his practice on bankruptcy. We'll be talking about that from Sobrani Ostrov, so we hope you join us for that. For Mark Kargman and everyone here, Al, thanks a lot. I'm your host, John DeMasi. Thank you for listening. Have yourself a great week. We will talk to you next Saturday, 1 o'clock, The Law in Action, right here on WPG Talk Radio 1450. Have yourself a great week. Take care.